Welcome back, Tiger fans, to Rock 'Em Radio's football podcast. I'm Nate Edwards. That's Brandon BK Kiley. This is Before the Box Score 6-1 edition. Welcome to South Carolina week. Welcome to the real SEC rival for Missouri week. Welcome to recruiting news week, ? BK, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Never been any better. Missouri is 6-1 on the season. They are already bowl bound, and they've got South Carolina this week, who I don't respect. Just flat out do not respect. Do not respect that football team. Do not respect that fan base. Don't get into my messages. Don't get into my ats. I don't need any of that from any of you guys coming at me from Gamecock Nation. Nope. Your coach is a fraud. Your team's a fraud. You're no good. You're bad at football, and Missouri's going to whoop up on you this week. I'm looking forward to it, Nate.
Wow. Shane Beamer also broke his foot by kicking something after
because he's an angry little man.
What do you think he kicked?
It's a great question. That feels like that's a locker. Like he's angry after the game, kicks a locker because he's trying to prove a point. This will never happen again. Not here, not this team. You know, the whole thing. Oh, gauntlet.
This is South Carolina football.
Yeah, all the history of good old South Carolina football pre Steve Spurrier.
31 years South Carolina has been in the SEC. They've won the East uno time. Just throwing it out there. And they're certainly not going to do it this year, so they will have gone 32 years in the SEC East and only won at one time.
Prior to Steve Spurrier, they finished in the top 15 in the country all of 4 times in their history as a program. They've been playing football there since 1903, my friend.
Steve Spurrier was he was the guy. He got them SP plus 14 points better than the average team like multiple times. Will Muschamp did it once. Shane Beamer did it last year, and everything else is just in the toilet. So I mean,
2011 to 2013, they were consistently a 10 plus win team. They were awesome.
Yeah.
And then, he left and they weren't good.
Crazy what happens when you have a Hall of Fame coach. Ask Missouri, right? So anyway, welcome to South Carolina week. You suck, Columbia least. That's right. I'm the first to make that joke. Yeah. But we're going to open up this week. We're going to talk about Cruton in the middle of the season. Why would we do that, BK? Why would we talk about Cruton in the middle of the season? Well, I'll tell you why. You remember a guy named Ryan Wingo? He of the W last names that Eli Drinkwitz is fond of tweeting at and putting up on the social media, and one of the biggest targets for Missouri's 2024 recruiting class. Yeah, that guy. You'll remember Missouri got Williams Nwaneri to commit earlier this year, and all eyes look to Ryan Wingo of the Flying Wingo Brothers, football savants. Now, he has had his commitment date set at December 20th for a very long time. But the reason why we're talking about it now, in the middle of the most hated rivalry week, is because Ryan Wingo said he's moving his commitment date up. After multiple visits to Mizzou's campus, after constant communication with this staff, he's moving his commitment date up. BK, what does this mean?
Well, first of all, it means good things, Nate. It means very good things, because basically everybody and their brother that is able to, put in predictions on these kinds of things has put in a prediction that Missouri's going to land Ryan Wingo. And that's mostly come within the last week or so, although some places, and credit to Gabe DeArmond of Power Mizzou, he had put his in, I think, like 4 weeks ago. So some people have been on this for a while, suggesting, hey, Ryan Wingo's going to end up at Missouri, and it's just a matter of time. Like, I don't know if that's going to be October, November, December, but eventually he's going to be donning a Missouri uniform. Well, it appears that time is coming sooner rather than later, potentially as soon as November 1st or even before then. Just to be clear, I'm not saying November 1st is the day that he's picking Mizzou. I'm just saying, like, by November, it's very possible, maybe even likely, that Ryan Wingo will be a Missouri Tiger. Man, that is huge. Like, this is, we talked about how significant it was to pull a Williams Nwaneri in this recruiting class. To get 2 5-stars in the same recruiting class They have never done that in
Never.
the state of Missouri. I
Never.
don't think they've ever had 2 5-stars in general, but they have not pulled 2 in-state 5-stars in their history as a program, at least since Rivals has been doing this, which dates back 20 plus years. So you can't overstate how significant this kind of a haul would be, man. This is recruiting at a level unforeseen at the University of Missouri. So to pull him is absolutely massive.
I'm going back. There's been plenty of years with multiple 4-stars. I have not seen a year with multiple 5-stars. And I'm going all the way back to 2012 right now. So, yeah, this is significant. And not only is it significant because of who Ryan Wingo is. Obviously, he's a tremendous player. He is high demand. I got it. 2012. Dorial Green Beckham and Andre Pipkins were both 5-stars according to Rivals. But that's the only one. And Pipkins was always going to go to Michigan because he was a Michigan kid.
Oh, I'm talking about guys that signed with Mizzou.
No, well, yeah, but also just have there ever been 2 5-stars in the state of Missouri? Like one time. Ryan Wingo's great, but also Ryan Wingo is very well connected. He is he's a networker, and he is really good friends with Jeremiah McClellan, another wide receiver from St. Louis, who is currently committed to Ohio State, who will be going to Columbus for an on-campus visit this weekend. And those two have been talking for quite some time, and it has been reported by multiple outlets that those two would like to play college football together. So, BK, if you get Ryan, kind of feels like you get Jeremiah too.
I mean, maybe. It seems like things are at least at a minimum trending in that direction, you know, and we'll see what comes from it at that point. Like, this has the potential to be a really special class coming off of a really special season. And that is why this kind of momentum on the field starts to matter, because you've got this NIL stuff. And listen, guys, you should not feel like it is a devalued commitment because of NIL. If somebody from another school, like if another fan base is saying, hey, you only got those guys because of the money that you paid them. Hey, that's part of it.
Yeah, that's always been part of it.
That is true. Like, it is objectively true that Williams Nwaneri probably looked at Mizzou because they were able to offer them money or offer his family money quicker than other teams were. Guess what? Mizzou capitalized on it. He didn't have to sign with Missouri. He decided, you know what? They can offer me money quicker, and I would like to play there. And when you combine those two things, it sure seemed to have worked out pretty well for Nwaneri. The same thing is now appearing to be true for Ryan Wingo. It may end up being true for Jeremiah McClellan. Hopefully it ends up being true for like a Tion Gray, who was committed to Mizzou for a while. It's not me reporting anything, but hey, maybe he considers, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on. Maybe I reconsider my commitment, you know? Aeneas Williams, running back that's currently committed to Notre Dame. Does he consider giving another look at Mizzou? There's been some chatter about Jaden Riddell, Ray Peck tight end. Does he reconsider Mizzou after committing to Georgia because of all this momentum that's in their direction? That's stuff that happens when you get multiple 5-stars in the state of Missouri that decide, you know what, I'm going to stay home. And especially when you have those guys that do it after Luther Burden did it, and Luther Burden is becoming the star that he is right now at Mizzou. When you've got all of that kind of combining at one time, whoo, buddy, it's a good mix if you're a Missouri fan.
It is. Both on the high school front and on the transfer portal front. Because that's the other thing. These, you know, the St. Louis football community, the fraternity of players is large, but not, you know, it's a community. Let's stay in touch with each other wherever they go, whether it's Oregon or Ohio State or Notre Dame or whatever. They talk still. And there has been kind of rumors flying around that there are some old St. Louis kids who went to other schools who might be interested in coming back. And again, kind of like what Luther Burden is doing, potentially what Ryan Wingo, Jeremiah McClellan are doing. Like, hey, yeah, let me go back to the hometown school. Let's be locally famous. Let's be rock stars, you know, in St. Louis and Missouri. Let's make our team awesome. You know, BK, you know, I know we've played this game off air, but you know, we could play the game on air too. Just think back of the last 3 recruiting classes right? And think of all the guys who are currently on teams that may have started or currently aren't starting, who you might be interested in coming back. I mean, we talked about, I like Gabriel Rubio, who was out of St. Peters, Missouri, who's a defensive tackle, really hasn't seen the field with Notre Dame. I liked Bo Stevens, who was an offensive tackle coming out of high school, currently a guard at Iowa. Maybe you go back and you think of, a Tyson Ford at Notre Dame, or, maybe a Dominique Orange at Iowa State. Like
Jeremiah Love. That's the first name that immediately came to mind.
Yes, the running back at Notre Dame. Yes, that's a big one.
If he were willing, and this is not based on any reporting, and this is pure speculation. I want to say that up front. He may be completely happy at Notre Dame, but he's not playing a ton. I think he should be playing more. He played really well early on when he got his opportunities. If he were to come home and play at Mizzou, and he is the player that we think he is, dude, he's immediately your starter next year, and is probably doing what you see right now from Cody Schrader. Like that's what's in play from him next year if he were to come back to Mizzou. But it requires him to be interested in transferring and leaving, obviously, a great situation at Notre Dame. Like it's hard to speak ill of that, but if you wanted to, hey man, we would certainly accept it.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. And I don't want to get too far ahead of my skis here. Like, obviously, Mizzou's NIL collective is very aggressive and very competitive. It's not infinite, right? You can't take everybody back, or at least not to the certain same degree as like a 5-star would be able to demand, or I basically a guaranteed starter. You can't do that, but this is what happens when you have magical seasons on the field as well as magical seasons off the field, which Eli Drinkwitz has delivered on the recruiting side time and time again. It's always been the on-field stuff, and now you're seeing the fruits of that finally come through. You are winning games. You're at the top of your division or close to it. You are already bowl eligible. The only loss is to a close one to a great LSU team. Eli Drinkwitz has always been a good pitchman, a good salesman, and his staff has been too. And now it's, hey, look at the wins. Hey, look at those bag of chips that Luther's on. Hey, look at the emos that Brady and Luther are flinging around. Like,
they were selling the idea of hope. Now they're selling the products.
Exactly. When you translate the, hey, we're building something here, to, hey, we built it and we want you to keep building it with us, that is tangible.
I've got a question for you, Nate.
Yeah.
Are we going to look back at Luther Burden as, let me ask this a different way, because we don't know what the history is yet. And we can say this because of what happened after him. Brad Smith was the one that made Mizzou football possible in the Gary Pinkel era. He was the one that made it cool to go to Mizzou. Mm-hmm. Is Luther Burden going to be remembered as Brad Smith is in your mind? Like, is that the potential corollary?
As in the guy who made it, everything else happen after him.
Yeah, because without Brad Smith, Chase Daniel doesn't happen. Without Brad Smith, the SEC doesn't happen. Like, Brad Smith is the genesis of everything that happened for Mizzou football that was good beyond 2000, like in the Gary Pinkel tenure. He was the one that made everything else possible. Henry Josie came here because Brad Smith existed. Like, all of that, I feel comfortable saying. And then there's an era from like 2015 to 2022-ish, really, where it wasn't the same excitement surrounding Mizzou football. Now, there was the Drew Lock era where, like, you had the fun offenses and stuff, but the results never matched to the point where it became really cool for other kids to come here. I think Burden has the potential to be for Mizzou football in the 2020s what we saw from Brad Smith in the 2000s.
Yeah. I mean, they got to keep going, but he definitely has the potential to be that catalyst, right? This is what Mizzou recruiting looked like before Luther Burden. This is what it looks like after Luther Burden, and all the players that come to Mizzou because of that, or, whatever in the next round of realignment, or whatever next title or hardware that Missouri football earns. I think there's a potential there to point to Luther Burden as the catalyst for that. So I would agree. And I hope it's true, because I hope Missouri wins a ton and brings a lot of new recruits, and we can say, yep, there it was, the chip man, right? That was a change.
It's just a situation where it's hard to recognize history when you're in the middle of it.
It is.
And let's put it a different way. If Missouri football ends up going in the right trajectory, and this just becomes like a really fun, exciting era of college football in Columbia, I think that will be the way that Luther Burden is remembered. Like
Mhm.
if I just project forward in that way, that will be the way that we look back on it, is that he was this era's version of Brad Smith. And hell, man, it's a pretty good legacy to be able to leave somewhere, because Brad
Absolutely.
Smith is remembered as fondly as any Missouri athlete of the last 20 years for
Yeah.
setting aside the sport.
And continues to do so. That's the craziest thing. Like I feel like there's a lot of guys who come in and fade out, and you go, oh yeah, I guess, but no, Brad Smith is. I feel like if you saw him, you will just continue to hold him in that regard.
Yeah.
So it's
He's a legend.
Yeah.
There's a difference between legends and all-time great players, and Brad Smith is the legendary status of player at Mizzou.
Absolutely. So a lot of potential good recruiting news. A lot of things could happen soon. We don't know when. We don't have a timeline. We're not breaking any scoops here, but like, yeah, that's going to be good. And Rocky Nation will have you covered as far as everything that happens and what it means going forward. Speaking of going forward, let's look in the past. Is that a transition? What the hell was that? Okay. I want to touch back on the Kentucky game. I did the Beyond the Box score, broke it down, all my numbers. Man, I did not realize how close Mizzou and Kentucky played that game, because not only from a yards per play standpoint, not only from a third down conversion standpoint, not only the Kentucky ran it really well, Mizzou ran it really well, and both teams did the opposite really poorly. Like there was a lot of symmetry. There's a lot of similarity between these two teams, and yet one of them won by 17. And you go, huh, okay, weird. How did that happen? And certainly the 3 turnovers help, but man, you want to talk. Let me rephrase. I talk about doing the little things right. I put up the individual report card. Like these are the little things that matter that can flip a game, especially when it's against a peer or a team that's expected to beat you. If you have a massive advantage there, that goes a long way. That does include turnovers. It also includes field position.
Yep.
Boy, Mizzou had a 13-yard advantage in average starting field position. That matters over 13 possessions. I promise you. And again, like I said, the turnovers do matter, but my God, they were able to do so much with just little stuff. The penalties, I don't know if you realize this, and I think maybe the stat broadcast talked about it, but Kentucky had more yards in penalties than they had yards through the air. Yeah, and that's before you take out sack yardage. Because with sack yardage, they had 87 yards passing net. Like, Kentucky always wins with kind of smashy smash, ugly offense, a defense that just snuffs out whatever you want to do and plays smart football and take advantage of the little things. And like you said in your post game, and like you said in the pod after the game, Mizzou out Kentucky by being smart, smashy smash, and don't make mistakes.
Yep. Just wait for the other team to beat themselves, and they will. Eventually, they will find a way to beat themselves. And as long as you take advantage when they do, you'll win the football game. That's like this Mark Stoops era of Kentucky football is that. And it's honestly why they have the record they do against winning teams in the SEC as well, because winning teams don't do that. Winning teams will not self-implode. They will just, hey, okay, you're going to play a 2-high shell. Cool, we'll just take whatever you're giving us. We'll go 5 yards at a time. We'll just matriculate down the field. That's fine. No problem. And winning teams do that. And then they continue to move the ball down the field. They finish the game with, 30 points, 34 points. They win the game and they leave Lexington. They're like, okay, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. See you next year. And that's kind of the way that it goes. So when you don't do that against Kentucky, and I think you were the one that said this like 2 years ago, and I will never unforget what you said, they take the mirror to you. They put it in front of your face and say, this is who you are. And it could be good, it could be bad, it could be somewhere in between, but they let you know this is who you are. Because when you play against Kentucky, if you are good, you will win. If you are bad, you will lose. If you are somewhere in between, you will probably lose, because Kentucky is just above average in the SEC almost every single season. So for Missouri, what you learned in that game, Missouri's good. I don't know what level of good. We'll find that out over the next, 5 weeks of this football season. But they are objectively a good football team. And that is the type of game that you only win if you are a good football team.
Yeah. Mizzou took care of business, man. That wasn't pretty. I think I know I texted you this. In the third quarter, Missouri had a 0% success rate running the ball. 0%. None of their runs in the third quarter did what they needed to do. And yet they kept doing it and just trudging down the field and strategically throwing the ball and getting just enough to keep going. And it's just that's Stoops ball, baby. I can't believe it. And the other thing that absolutely blew me away was the amount of yardage that Kentucky got in the first quarter and specifically on first down. Like we're talking 20% of their plays produced like 60% of their total yards, right? Like first quarter, everything was going right. And then second, third, fourth quarter, it all went wrong. And I don't think Blake Baker did any like adjustments. I don't think he had some massive change to what they were doing. They just kind of played back a little bit. They got pressure up front with their defensive line to the tune of Darius Robinson getting 2 sacks. The secondary played off to the tune of Chris Abrams-Drang getting 2 interceptions. Just these things they adapted enough, not throw the whole thing out, but just change a little bit. I'm not sure what they were, but apparently some changes were made, and that was enough to keep Kentucky in a hole. And they just portaled them to hell, and then they did what they had to do to run out the clock. Again, it's just the most impressive win for a game that should have been evenly matched. It, on paper, was evenly matched.
Honestly, so much of what changed was just tackling. Like they just decided we're going to tackle the guy that has the football now. Before they were like, hey, I'm going to try to hit him. And later they were like, I'm going to tackle him. And it is such a ridiculous statement, but it felt so accurate in the moment where it's like, yeah, man, I guess they're going to tackle the ball carrier to the ground now. I don't know why that changed or what went wrong early on, but dude, some of the angles, and this was the case against LSU as well. I think it's just a characteristic of the defense this year, for better or for worse, and mostly for worse. They take bad angles. They don't tackle all the time. It's super inconsistent. But when they do those things well, when they take the right ankles and they are tackling to the ground, they're a really good defense. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of getting those things corrected in the moment.
Yeah. Football's about blocking and tackling. It's not a complicated sport. We overcomplicate it, but just block the guy in front of you on offense and tackle the guy in front of you on defense. That's all you got to do. So yeah, maybe that's all it was. Just decided to grow up and play tackle football. And that's fine. But you know what's funny is that, and I know for sure the broadcast mentioned this, that the winner of Kentucky and Missouri finishes above the other one. And that's been true, every year. And we talked about how Kentucky, just like you said, shows you the mirror. You know what game doesn't follow those rules? Missouri, South Carolina. Think of all the times that the better team has lost. 2013 Missouri lost to 2013 South Carolina. At least by SP+, Missouri was better. 2018 Missouri lost to 2018 South Carolina. Again, that Missouri team was better. Missouri beat South Carolina last year. On paper, South Carolina was a better team last year. It's just, this game does not follow the rules. And so when I look at this and I see how bad South Carolina's defense is, how one-dimensional their offense is, and how complete of a team Missouri has shown to be all year, I guess that means South Carolina is going to win. What am I supposed to do with this, BK? I'm feeling uncomfortable.
Again, I don't respect that team. I don't fear that team.
Yeah, good.
It's not a very good football team. They are very, very mediocre. And their fans came into the season and be like, people are underestimating South Carolina this year. This is going to be the year.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, man, they've got a couple of really good players. Like, I don't know how you pronounce his last name. I apologize. Is it legit? Leggett?
Might as well be legit.
That guy is a stud. And it's on me that I don't know how to pronounce his last name. But my God, every time I turn on a South Carolina game, it feels like he is making a big play. Like he's got some... He looks like Deebo Samuel on the football field, just like in that jersey because of his size. But he kind of plays like Emmanuel Hall, where it's just deep ball after deep ball after deep ball. And if they're connecting on them, dude, they can beat you with it. Like if they connect the way that they did against Mississippi State, he had 5 catches in that game for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. Against North Carolina, 9 receptions for 180 yards. Like if they're doing that against you, it's going to be a long day, brother. But the problem, it's so inconsistent.
Yeah.
And Spencer Rattler, when he goes deep, holds the ball so long. It's like a 4-second ho heave. And if he's waiting that long and you're playing against a Blake Baker defense, man, whew, you're gonna get heated up eventually. There's gonna be somebody that's coming off of the edge blitzing, and he's just not gonna have time to do stuff like that consistently.
No. I mean, Spencer Rattler's been very accurate this year. 73.6% completion percentage. That's 4th in all of FBS. Like, we're talking Brady Cook levels before the last 2 weeks happened of accuracy. But how is he doing it? Well, you talked about Xavier Legette. Obviously, he's a deep threat. He's getting targeted more than 9 yards down the field 65% of the time. So if he's getting targeted, it's way down there. And I understand that. But also, when you look at this offense, the percentage of passes with 20-plus air yards is 9.7%. That's 120th in the country. And yes, it's Xavier Legette going deep. Yes, it's their other receiver who also has a tremendous name, Omega Blake. What a great name. Yeah, Omega is also going deep. He is another tall receiver. He's on the opposite side of Xavier Legette. But Omega Blake's getting tired, and 53% of his stuff is deep routes. But here's the thing. Spencer Rattler is leading the nation in targets to the inline or slot receiver and tight end. And Trey Knox is their tight end. He used to be at Arkansas, if that name sounds familiar to you. He's from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, was at Arkansas, now he's at South Carolina. He has 33 targets, 25 catches, and 214 yards. That is second on the team. Okay, so it's him. It's Marion Brown, who's their slot receiver, who's another transfer coming in. And Spencer Rattler just targets them constantly, and then will occasionally just go deep to Xavier Legette or Omega Blake. And it's not complicated. It's not, they can't really run the ball. And if they do, it stinks. So it's very one-dimensional, but it works because this is the 17th best offense in the country, believe it or not, according to Bill C's SP+. They don't do anything except pass the ball. They're 17th in the country. And not only that, but they have done enough. They should be 3-3. They should have beaten Florida, and they didn't. So they can scare you. They do one thing really well, and you don't always stop it. I don't know. Shootouts are fun. Shootouts also make me crazy, but I know you don't respect them, but they got the pieces to really put a scare in Missouri this week.
They can. Don't get me wrong. But I just think Missouri's better.
That's fine.
Just flat out think Mizzou's better. One thing to keep in mind, I talked about how, Mizzou's going to heat them up whenever they blitz. Spencer Rattler's been really good against the blitz so far this year. According to Pro Football Focus, against the blitz, he has 100 dropbacks in such situations. And in those scenarios, he's averaging 10 yards per attempt. He's completing 74% of his passes. He's thrown 9 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. So most teams have not had success when blitzing Spencer Rattler so far this year. However, when he is under pressure, which does not happen a lot when blitzed so far this year, but I believe that Missouri is going to be able to do so when they blitz because they get pressure consistently when they blitz. They just don't get home very often when they blitz.
Right.
So against pressure, Nate, he's completing 49% of his pass attempts, 7.5 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He becomes very erratic when he is under pressure. He has a 72 quarterback rating in those scenarios. When blitzed, 145. So if you're able to get pressure, you can get him into a spot where he's very uncomfortable. If you don't get him under pressure and you blitz, he will carve you up because he is more than happy to take those underneath routes that you were talking about, and he'll hit his hot read. He'll say, I'll take 7 yards and we'll go on to the next down. Yep. That's fine. You have to make sure that you are, even if you're not getting home, even if you're not sacking him, you have to make him uncomfortable whenever you decide to bring your blitz.
Yeah. He is the oldest quarterback in the SEC. This is the one tested old quarterback that Missouri has to go up against. And you're right. When he knows it's a blitz down, he does fine. They're like 59th in the country in blitz down success rate, which is tough to do. But you talked about, Missouri's got to create pressure. Well, boy, Let me tell you, South Carolina lets you get pressure. In fact, they are 100th even in pressure rate. Their offensive line gives up about 33.9% pressure rate every time they drop back. They have one of the worst sack rates in the country. There's only 3 teams worse than they are. And they give most of them up on standard down. So, like, if they know you're blitzing, you're cooked. But if you just blitz randomly, like on a standard down, like a 1st and 10 or a 2nd and 5, they are completely helpless. And the crazy thing to me is that when you see the difference between quarterbacks who throw against zone and throw against man, sometimes you see that they favor one or the other. Sometimes it doesn't really matter. Spencer Rattler definitely has a favorite. If you throw man defense at him, he is averaging 12.2 yards per throw. If you throw zone at him, like Blake Baker does when he does his blitzes, that drops to 9.6. Like that's almost a 3.5 yard difference between what you're doing in zone and man. So go play zone and find some pressure because they'll give it to you on early downs. And that's what we got to do to get him, throw him off of his rhythm and make bad choices.
I genuinely think that Missouri is capable of holding them to 27 or fewer. And I think that's going to be the goal in this game. Like, I think your offense is going to be fine. I think your offense is going to be more than capable of putting up points against this South Carolina defense. The concern is, can you stop them? You know, because if you can't stop them, then it's going to be a long day for you. But you probably got to come away with a turnover and 2 to 3 stops. And if you can do that over the course of the game, you probably come out winning. But it's about coming away with about 4 stops or so over the course of this game.
I could see that. And, you know, through the season, Spencer Rattler's only thrown 4 interceptions. I don't know.
All while under pressure.
There you go. I was going to say, I didn't know where they came, but if it's all under pressure, then there you go. You know, when I do these previews during the summer, sometimes I'm right. And I was looking at the one that I wrote. I was like, well, they don't have any running backs, and they just brought in a guy from a D3 college named Newberry, right? They're starting over in the secondary. They're losing all of their pass rushers. And lo and behold, they stink at running the ball. They can't stop the pass. They can't create pressure on defense. Like, sometimes these things just write themselves. I talked about LSU during that week, and I said that even the worst blue chip defense sometimes remembers their blue chip defenders and rise to the occasion and ball out. And we saw a little bit of that in the second half against LSU. That's not the case with South Carolina. Like, they got good players. Obviously, they're all D1 college football players, but a lot of them were transfers in who couldn't see the field at other schools. They weren't highly rated coming out of high school, and the scheme's not working. You know, I love Clayton White. I loved him at Western Kentucky. I wanted Mizzou to hire him when he was looking to get out. He has not been able to put together a defense at South Carolina that works. It doesn't feel like he's got the players that he wants, and they are a liability. So, yeah, I'm going to eat my words. I understand this, but I am not concerned that South Carolina rises to the occasion on defense and magically flusters the hell out of Missouri's offense unless, like, a Brady Cook gets injured or something like that. Like, I don't see it. It is exactly to your point. Does Spencer Rattler just have, you know, his Leroy Jenkins moment, and Xavier Legette is there every single time, and this turns into a shootout that you can't quite pull away, and then it's last man with the ball, and that ends up being South Carolina. That's really the only way I see this team losing. But again, it's Mizzou, South Carolina. Crazier things have happened.
They don't really create havoc. It's not a team that creates tackles for loss. They're last in the SEC so far this year in TFLs. The biggest thing is, like, this needs to be a Brady Cook game. They need to get him going again. Last week needs to be the outlier. Brady Cook, Luther Burden, Mookie Cooper, maybe a little more Brett Norfleet in a game like this. Continue getting it going with Theo Weiss. Like, this passing game has to be what wins it for you. They gave up 400 yards through the air against Florida. They gave up 485 through the air against Mississippi State. The efficiency numbers were pretty darn good for Georgia and for Tennessee. And that's saying something because Tennessee is not efficient through the air.
Yeah.
This is a defense that can be had through the air. North Carolina, they have a really good quarterback, but they threw for 270 through the air and averaged more than 8 yards per attempt. Like, everybody that has a capable passing game, forget good, capable passing game, throws for a ton of efficiency and a bunch of yards against this team, you should throw it 40 plus times in this game.
Yep.
That should be the game plan. The game plan should be going in saying, hey, we get 65 plays, let's say offensively, 40 of them need to be passes. Because this is a pretty good run defense. They have mostly been successful against the run so far this year against most of their opponents.
Yeah.
They stink through the air. Absolutely terrible. So this is a game that you win with Luther Burden. It is a game that you win with Mookie Cooper. It is a game that you win with all of those pass catchers and Brady Cook.
Yeah. I mean, their real strength on the ground is not giving you big runs. They take that away. But you can get sometimes you can get a big play through the air. It's just 40 passes, and it might end up being 290 yards. I don't care. It's going to be enough to get you there. Like, let Luther cook, let Brady cook, let Theo cook, let Mookie Cooper cook.
They've allowed 14 passing plays this year of 30 plus yards.
Whoops.
Do that.
Whoops.
Run the big pass play. Marquis Sean, I didn't even mention him. Marquis Sean,
just let him go.
Get him going.
Let him go.
40 plus yards 6 times so far this year.
That's a tasty stat.
50 plus yards 4 times so far this year.
Oh my God.
You can get big passing plays against this team.
That's bad. Yeah. So you said South Carolina is 27. What do you think the good guys get?
37.
Ooh, I don't like that.
I think this is one of those games where you leave it and you're like, yeah, they took care of business. Go into the bye, feel good about that, and we can talk about Georgia. When Missouri goes down to Athens against the biggest, most fraudulent top 5 team in the last decade or so, and we'll talk about what that's going to be like. I'm all in on this, dude. I think the more I look into it, the more I think about what I've seen from Georgia this year, what the numbers say about Georgia so far this year. They are a very good football team. I'm not taking that away from them. The idea that they are the best team in the country right now and are rated number 1 is just such nonsense. They have earned that based on what they have done in previous iterations of this same program. Yeah. This specific program should not be, in my opinion, in the top 5.
Fair enough, especially without Brock Bowers. Yeah. We'll cover that some other time. Yes. As far as South Carolina, I think it's going to be closer. I think it's going to be uncomfortable. I want to say 35-27. Okay. Good guys.
Mizzou covers.
Yeah. Yeah.
7-point spread.
It's just, outside a handful of games, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, teams just kind of linger, and maybe that's of the past, right? Maybe we put that behind us, but this South Carolina squad has an ability to be annoying and linger, and Missouri has shown in the past to let teams linger. So I'm going to say 35-27. Good guys win. And it's going to feel like we should have beaten them by more. But again, just win. Just win. You're 6-1. Just keep winning. That's all I ask.
When was the last time that Missouri was this big of a favorite against a non-Vanderbilt SEC opponent?
Could not tell you that one. If I had to guess,
7-point favorite going into this one.
7 points.
Going through it right now. They've been favored by a lot against Vandy, as you would imagine.
That happens. Yeah.
Oh, Arkansas. Arkansas in the 2019 season.
Yep, there you go. God, they were so bad.
Kentucky in the 2019 season as well. Ole Miss in the 2019 season. Man, I remember when that season was fun.
Well, remember when that team was winning?
Yeah, South Carolina that season. They were favored big on everybody that year. Oh, man. That team.
Very unrelated or somewhat related. UNLV is going to go bowling, and that is the current employer of one Barry Odom.
Yeah.
Now, part of that, I think, is that he inherited a better team than anyone thought he had, because there's no reason why they should have fired their head coach, other than the fact that Desiree Reed-Francois was no longer there.
Yeah.
But good for Barry Odom.
Apparently, Barry, I've got a buddy that lives in Vegas and works out there. Apparently, Barry's embracing the area pretty well too. He's doing a good job of kind of building up the program.
He also made a great offensive coordinator hire. Imagine what that does for you.
And he hired his buddy, a defense coordinator.
Mike Shear?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy. Mike. Yeah. I'm glad it's working out for him. I really am. I'm also glad he's over there because we're doing great over here. Final thoughts before we get the heck out of here.
It's a fraudulent program.
Oh, my God.
They don't
yes.
deserve your respect.
Ah.
And on Saturday, Missouri will once again prove that the superior Columbia resides in the state of Missouri. And it will be nice to see them take care of business once again against the Gamecocks of South Carolina, who 5 years ago I respected. But ever since then, I've had no reason to.
Chesty BK. Man, I'm digging it. That is going to be our show for today. As always, we appreciate the downloads and the subscriptions. Leave a comment or rate us. We love all types of feedback from you all. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at H. Edwards. He's at BK Sports Talk. And of course, you can follow the Rock M flagship at Rock M Nation and the podcasting outlet at Rock M Radio. We appreciate you tuning in this time. We'll try to do better next time. And until then, MIZ.
ZOU.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, just click the subscribe button below. And you can find this podcast through the Apple Podcast app or for iPhone, or the Google Podcast app for Android, or whatever app you use to listen to your podcast. We are also available on Spotify. Just search for Rock M Radio. And if you like other sports, Fans First Sports Network is a podcast network that has coverage of all other teams, Major League Baseball, MLS, NFL, whatever you want to listen and read about. It is a great network full of really fantastic podcasts. So look them up and subscribe to any and all of those podcasts. Rock M Radio will be back with more episodes coming soon. Thanks.